Welcome back to the Green Lectionary Podcast, a production of Creation Justice Ministries. Green Lectionary is a conversation on Scripture through the lens of creation justice. My name is Derek Weston, and today we will be looking at a text for August 9th, proper 14 of Ordinary Time. For the summer, we've been focusing on the text for Ordinary Time, the Sundays that fall in between the better-known liturgical seasons. My guest today is Debra Rienstra. Dr. Rienstra is a professor of English at Calvin University and the author of Refugia Faith, Seeking Hidden Shelters, Ordinary Wonders, and the Healing of the Earth. Before we begin, I'm happy to announce that this year the Green Lectionary Podcast will be a part of the God Pods at Theology Beer Camp. Theology Beer Camp is a unique 3-day experience for theology nerds and church outcasts. I had the pleasure of attending last year and got to hear a slate of amazing speakers and have excellent conversations about the current and future states of the church, all while enjoying some excellent beers. Theology Beer Camp will be taking place at Pine Ridge Presbyterian Church in Kansas City, Missouri from October 8th to 10th. Hope to see you there. You can learn more at theologybeer.camp. Join us now as we look at Matthew 14 through the lens of creation justice. All right, we're back with Debra Rienstra, who's been on the show so many times, and has always been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming back.
Well, it is always a pleasure to be here. We always have a good time.
And so I know you don't yet have a book to promote, but I know that you just finished one. So tell us about the book that we can all be looking forward to next year.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, it's called Refugia Church. It's a follow-up to my 2022 book, Refugia Faith. And this one is more aimed at faith communities, particularly Christian faith communities, churches including. And the idea is, how can we adjust our faith and practice for a climate-changed world together? What are the ways that churches and faith communities can and are doing this? So a good share of the book is storytelling about churches who have done really amazing things, but also just very simple things. And it's kind of a deep dive into how they did it. Because it's one thing to say, we want to start a community garden, or we want to start engaging in advocacy. And it's quite another thing to figure out how to do it. So there's definitely some explanation for this strange moment that we find ourselves in historically. And there's definitely some sort of vision casting for ecclesiology. How do we think about the church at this moment? And the refugia metaphor is an important part of that. But it's also a lot of kind of joyful storytelling about churches who've done cool things or faith communities. And then there's sort of a how-to chapter as well, and a chapter on Sabbath as a faith practice that I didn't address much in Refugia Faith, but seems to be a really lovely place to kind of conclude the book. So that's what we have to look forward to, I think.
I'm so excited. And I'm actually really surprised. I shouldn't be, maybe, about the role of Sabbath in this. I think that's one of those practices that we kind of recognize sort of on an individual level, the importance of it, but I don't know that we think about it so much as a communal practice. So that's really intriguing.
You know, I was I was surprised by that too. It just seemed, it kept nagging me, like, you need to talk about this. So, I mean, that chapter is more an invitation than any kind of storytelling or here's my 10-point plan for having us all, I don't know. But I think it's just an invitation to have us think together about that and talk about it together. And, it's a creation care and climate justice practice as well. The need to rest ourselves, but the need to let the earth rest from our interference, from our exploitation, from, even our sort of good and sustainable use. Part of sustainability is rest. Any farmer knows that. You have to let the land rest. So it's a creation practice as well as just a good spiritual practice for us too.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so excited about this because I think so many of the churches that I've been in conversation with are always just kind of looking for, there's one person in the congregation who gets really excited about this and they feel like they're swimming upstream trying to pull the rest of their congregation along and thinking about how do we do this again, moving from individual practice, moving from sort of this individual mindset of the individual responsibility, so much of how we approach this crisis, but to think about how can we do this in communities. I imagine that this is going to be a huge gift for folks.
Well, it was a gift for me to hear
Mm,
people's stories and to hear how excited they were to tell them.
mm.
So there is something, I don't want to promise that the minute you form a creation care team or a green team, everything's going to be great and your church is going to be full of joy. But it is sort of remarkable that the people who do this work together enjoy it so much.
Yeah,
And it's not to say there aren't frustrations and
sure.
obstacles and so on, but there is a kind of anytime we sort of get muddy together as a community, it can be really a bonding experience. But also just this feeling of agency, I think,
Mm,
has been really important for people. And of course, different communities do it in different ways. There's not a one size fits all. It's not a franchisable plan by any means. But the other thing I've noticed too is that sometimes people beyond the usual suspects
mm,
get involved in this kind of work. And anyone who is on staff at a church, anyone who is a, sort of hardcore volunteer, everybody's exhausted.
mhm,
And it's sort of standard procedure that the same, 12 people are on all the committees or whatever. But there are people in and on the edges and maybe on the outside
mm.
of faith communities that would manage to get involved with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that is a really great opportunity to build community and to build community with neighbors. So another really great thing I'm seeing a lot of is partnering, interfaith partnering, or even partnering with civic organizations and people outside faith groups altogether. And I think that's incredibly important right now,
Yeah.
that we not be so insular, that we feel okay about holding hands with people we don't agree with on every last thing and doing things together for a greater good. And there are a lot of churches who are really good at this and some who just haven't done it.
Mm,
And there's such great opportunity there, especially with advocacy or resilience planning, any kind of community land use situation. It's
mhm.
really great for faith communities to partner with others. So there's just such a lot of joyful potential. And of course, there's a lot of intersectional potential here too. So one of the most common sort of reluctances to get involved with climate justice or creation care is we're already doing so much stuff, right?
Yeah.
How can we possibly do any more? Well, yes, I understand that completely. But the thing is, working on land use in your community or water management or pollution mitigation or any of these things, it's intersectional. You are
Mm,
immediately in the area of environmental justice and justice in general. I mean, even voting rights,
mhm,
protecting voting rights, even immigration. There's a reason people groups are moving around the world, and it a lot of it has to do with climate. There are certainly other causes, but we are going to see more migrations. And so figuring out how to deal with that in a just and sustainable way, that too is climate work.
yeah. Yeah. I'm I can't wait. I can't wait to read this book. I'm so excited. And I know like we'll probably talk a couple more times before it actually comes out.
Sure.
But I'm so
Well,
I'm so excited for this and I'm so excited that you took this and then you took the ideas from the first book and that you've really expanded them and brought the community aspects into it. I can't wait.
yeah. Well, thank you, Derek. And you and many other you are in the book, of course. And as our Creation Justice Ministries people and BTS Center people and Circlewood and all these Interfaith Power and Light, all these fantastic people, ordinary folk who are actually extraordinary. and it's been wonderful to sort of uphold your work and others' work like this. I feel like I'm just sort of a reporter on this. Like I'm just, kind of surveying the scene and interviewing people and just demonstrating this sort of convergence, the coming together of all these people doing great work and partnering with each other. I
Yeah.
mean, the Eco Preacher Initiative, for example, is a partnership with BTS and youth with climate justice and Lexington Seminary. And so it's so cool to see that happening.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a great ecosystem that we're a part of. And I love that.
Yeah. We're building corridors.
We are. We are. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. All right. Well, I want to keep talking about your book, but we should do what we're here to do.
All right. Let's do it. Let's do it.
So our text is Matthew 14, verses 22 to 33. This is a story people probably will recognize. And so it begins immediately. Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. Then evening came. He was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed a strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." So, where
Hmm.
is creation in this passage?
Well, for once, Derek, we've got an obvious answer.
You do
Yeah,
often get the harder
I
ones.
know, right? I don't know if you just anyway. Okay, so in this one, you got your hills and you got your Sea of Galilee, right? So it's really hard in this passage not to go straight to allegory. And we'll get there. We'll get there. But maybe we can just let the hills be hills and let the sea be a sea too for a little while. I don't know. So, one of the cool things about this passage is the context for me. So, we're about halfway through Matthew here. Jesus has done lots of preaching, he's done some healing, there's been some opposition. We've had the calming of the storm story in Matthew 2 before this. And the context here, so right before this chapter, Jesus has been rejected at Nazareth, his hometown. And then the story just before this is John the Baptist being beheaded. And the timeline's a little iffy there. Like, was this story inserted out of, I mean, who knows what the chronology is, right? So, one of the things I noticed right away, Jesus, after the John the Baptist thing, after he hears that news, Jesus goes away to sort of maybe grieve and process. I mean, this is his cousin, right? But he ends up with this hungry crowd. And so we get the feeding of the 5,000. And then he tries to get away again. I mean, I really appreciate this, right? Like, this time I am marching up the hills. I just need some time to myself, right? So the hills, he goes up the hill as a place to be alone and maybe get perspective. And there's lots of great resonance here with other moments of, people marching up hills. Think of Moses in the desert to encounter God, or Elijah. So he tries to get away again. I really just can't be. And then, the disciples are off on the boat and he walks on the water. So our story, right, is framed by this trying to get away and then the healing of the people. So there's this dialectic between Jesus needing time to process and also these miraculous moments, the feeding of the 5,000, the walking on water, and then framed by the healing of the people across the Sea of Galilee in Gennesaret. So I've always wondered, why the pericopes are positioned this way.
Mm.
And it seems to me, sort of these big miraculous moments. It's like Jesus is coming off this frustration and anger. And I wonder if in this way we might understand this,
Mm,
like why is it was such a stupid thing that
mm,
happened to John the Baptist. And, this sort of sense of this kind of stuff happens in the world.
mm,
There's this corrupt power and it just we understand this right now, right? All that is good and true and beautiful is sort of under threat.
mm.
And so I've always wondered if like Jesus is sort of bursting with power, because miraculous power. And also so maybe frustration and anger, but also this real pity on the crowd and
Mm,
compassion where he puts his needs aside, at least temporarily, to be alone and to pray and to get perspective and offers these miraculous moments for the crowd, feeding and healing. And so meanwhile, if you got the water, and I'm already getting like metaphorical, right? You've got the water, the sort of danger zone, the unformed, the sort of archetypal symbolism, water as chaos and primitive forces. And so it's hard not to go there quickly, but it is literally a lake, right? And the disciples are literally struggling on this lake. So I think, we have the hills and the water especially as our big sort of creation characters in this
mm.
story.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It's so easy, and it's a real temptation to immediately go to metaphors here because these are powerful images, and you've already drawn some beautiful parallels between other parts of scripture, and but then there is like, yeah, guy going up a mountain because he's just experienced this awful thing
Yeah.
with someone he loves and
Yeah.
like needs the healing that
Mm.
comes from being by yourself on a mountain.
Yeah. In nature,
In nature.
Yeah.
Right?
He doesn't go to the local library or something. Not that that's a bad idea,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then you have the water, he tries to get away from his disciples, and yet you kind of get the idea here that he senses that they're in trouble.
Yeah. Well,
and
yeah, he's maybe prayed out. I don't know. And in the version you read, it just said early in the morning, and in
yeah.
other versions it says the fourth watch.
Mm,
So, right, just almost dawn,
yeah. Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's been there all night. Yeah,
And
needs to get back to them. He kinda left them.
he's worried. Yeah. I mean, this feels a little parental, like
Yeah,
I've left the kids alone too
well,
long.
right? Those guys, I don't know
So
what they're doing.
he's got to go out there. And then the other piece that is the other piece of creation that comes up for me here is
Mhm.
wind.
Oh, of
Wind,
course, yeah.
wind is a big part of this. The fact that the
Yeah.
reason that they're inaccessible for
Mhm,
whatever reason is that the
mhm.
wind carried them away, and
Yeah,
the wind, and more so than, maybe not more so, but in just the same way that the water is seen as a threat, the
yeah.
water and the wind are a threat.
Mm.
And so again, you have, you know, wanting to deal with this as elements of creation, but also wanting to deal with this
Mm.
as these beautiful images that we get all throughout scripture.
Yes.
There's the wind is the spirit, right? It's the
Mm,
breath. It's like the thing that shakes us up and unsettles us.
mm.
And so here they are, shaken, unsettled.
Yeah.
And yet Jesus is not shaken and unsettled by the
Mm.
wind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of this really,
Mm.
it's really interesting, like the fact that Jesus, I guess more and more as I do this podcast more and more, it's just kind of like, Jesus didn't actually spend a lot of time indoors.
Right. I know.
He just really didn't. And
Yeah.
that just feels like he needed to be in these spaces where
Mhm.
he was going to be subjected, and where the
Hmm.
people around him were going to be subjected to the forces of creation
Yeah.
for good and for potential harm.
Mm. Yeah, this passage appears in Mark, or the story appears in Mark and John. There are differences, but they all agree it was a dark and stormy night.
Yeah.
So they all agree on the wind and the waves. And, I think most people, especially poorer people, spend a lot of time outside. It's how you make a living. It's an agricultural society. Either you're a fisherman, or you're farming somehow, or you're a laborer. People are just outside more.
Yeah.
And Jesus is not frequenting the gold-draped palatial rooms. He's out there with people. No, he's in a synagogue sometimes.
Mhm.
But yeah, life is just more outside. And thus, life is a struggle
Mhm.
in this period.
Mhm.
And I think, we definitely want to go to the allegorical part. There's a long history of that interpretation, and it's absolutely valid. But the literal struggle of making a living
Mm.
is something I think those of us who are in a affluent, cosseted world, we can love nature. We are somewhat insulated from the struggle.
Yeah.
But agriculture is a struggle, fishing is a struggle, getting around is a struggle. They can't take the ferry across the Sea of Galilee because
Right.
there is no ferry. They have to
There's no
they have
hurry.
to sail, or row. They're actually rowing in one of the other stories, rowing against the waves and the wind. So just sort of managing with the natural world
Mm.
in this ancient time is a struggle. So there's no question of these people trying to overpower nature like
Mm.
humans have been thinking
Mhm.
about, at least since the
Mm.
Enlightenment. Like, we're going to conquer the natural world. That's not really in the
Mhm.
playbook here. They're
Mm-mm.
just trying to live through the struggle. But, I think the cool thing is, as you were saying, Jesus is not fussed by the struggle.
Yeah.
In some ways, he can transcend it. And we've just seen this, the struggle with disease, he can heal, the struggle with feeding hungry people. Somehow he can, make bread and fish or get people to share their bread and fish, which is also a miracle, right? He can walk through a storm in this story. I have this vague recollection of reading Bible stories to my kids when they were
Mm.
little, and I can't remember which one. Probably my youngest. I just remember one of my kids going, "So, Jesus has superpowers?" I was like, "Yeah,
Well,
kind
yeah. Yeah. Kinda. I mean, in some
of."
ways, Jesus is the first superhero that I was exposed to in a
Right?
lot of ways.
If as a little kid, that's what makes you think Jesus is cool, okay, that'll do for now. But for I would wanna resist talking about. I read this in one of the commentaries on this passage, Jesus mastering the elements. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, but
Mm.
I don't know. I read some other commentator, an ancient commentator. There's these ancient commentaries where there's like really juicy snippets from all these people. So here we go. Arnobius the Younger,
Wow. Okay.
Arnobi, right. One of the sort of pantheon. Anyway, I love what he says. He says the sea, the way he described it, the sea is almost responding consciously to Jesus as an agent. He,
Mm.
he wrote, and yet the sea was afraid lest she take advantage of the one who created her. And then when Jesus walks on it, so she cooperates with Jesus, and then the sea, cooperates with Jesus. And then the countenance of the sea was truly joyful because she was kissing, even if not the lips, at least the feet of the Creator.
Wow. Wow.
And I thought, what a lovely alternative to Jesus mastering the elements. It's more like Jesus is cool, reconciled with
Mm.
the created order in ways that we are not post-fall.
Mhm.
So you go back and you think about Adam and the curse of Adam and the struggle,
Mhm.
the agricultural struggle, right, which is part of
Mhm.
the curse. And Jesus is sort of beyond that.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and I love this, and it kind of gets into our second question because I
Mm.
think the other part of the story that's really captivating is Peter.
Yeah.
Peter is probably if I had to pick one, Peter's probably my favorite character in the Bible
Mm,
because he tries so hard.
he really does.
Like bless his heart. Like
I
he
know.
tries so
Right?
hard. And there's something there where he's saying, "Oh, that's the way it's supposed to be." Like it's
Mm,
not just that Jesus is out there walking on the water.
mm,
What you've just said is so beautiful. Like Jesus has this peace and this
mm,
relationship with the
mm.
created order, and Peter's seeing that and going, "That's how it's supposed to be. I
Yeah.
should be able to do that too."
Yeah.
And like can't quite pull it off.
Yeah. I don't know, Derek. I think,
Or does
yeah.
pull it off and gets scared. Like
Yeah.
either way
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic.
I don't know. I think Peter just wants superpowers.
Also possible.
Also possible. Yeah.
Maybe I'm
No, but
being twisted.
I love that idea, right? Like that Jesus models this beautiful harmony with creation and Peter thinks that's the way to go. Yeah. So maybe we need to talk about allegory now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Let's go for
So
it.
classic allegory. So the boat is the church
Mm,
and Jesus here's a good one. Hilary of Poitiers. So Jesus returns in the fourth watch. Well, guess what? All the watches are allegorical. The first watch is the law. The second watch is the prophets. The third watch is the advent for Jesus' first advent.
okay.
I mean, there is just no limit. Once you go down this allegorical road, right? Everything. But here's a question that this ancient commentator asked. Hilary of Poitiers says, "Will Jesus find the church exhausted and buffeted about by the spirit of Antichrist when he comes?" And I was like, yes, yes, he
Yes.
will.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. Right. So this idea that the boat full of these hapless disciples is the church, tossed about by, gosh, we understand that, don't we?
Mhm.
Tossed about by the storms and winds of our times. And then the question now is, what do we make of Peter?
Mm.
And we had one answer there. So a lot of the commentators, and I think this is true even today, Peter gets like an A for effort and an F for faith. The poor guy, right? But and then of course, he gets out of the boat. He wants to go to Jesus. He wants to be like Jesus maybe. And then he has this moment of amazing faith, I guess we could look at it that way. And then of course, it's very clear he looks at the wind and the
Mhm.
waves. He takes his eyes off Jesus and looks at the so the classic interpretation, right, is don't take your eyes off Jesus. By the way, there's a lot of art, very, very cheesy, bad art about this story. So someone help, okay? Someone please. The the icons, right? Orthodox icons are actually better and they focus on that moment when Jesus reaches out to Peter.
Mm.
And I think that's right. That is the most beautiful moment. Peter steps out maybe in faith, maybe foolishly. I don't know. Why is he
Mm.
getting out of the boat? Maybe it's in faith. Maybe it's what we were saying. I love that the story leaves that ambiguous.
Mhm.
And he begins to sink, and Jesus says, and it sounds very patronizing.
Mhm.
Oh, why do you have? But in the Greek, it's more like, oh, little faith.
Mm.
It's more
Mhm.
like, oh,
Mhm.
honey.
Yeah.
Little faith is like one word or something in Greek, and
Mm.
oh, honey, why
Mhm.
did you doubt?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that beautiful moment of Jesus reaches to Peter and basically hauls him in the boat, right? Hauls him
Yeah.
back in the boat. There's something really beautiful about
Mm.
that moment, and rightly so. Artists and commentators have focused on it. Yeah, so I think it's fine to go to the allegorical elements here and say, yeah, they do have allegorical meaning for us, and there is something about sticking together
Mm.
and letting Jesus reach out to us amid the storms and basically save us and then calm the storm.
Mm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's not to be. So this one, this is the only version of the story that includes that Peter part. Mark
Mm.
and John don't say anything about Peter. I mean, maybe they're embarrassed for him, I don't know. Or jealous, who knows? But, it means that this version of the story has been taken as a lesson in discipleship. The other ones have been taken different ways. So Mark is sort of this epiphany, this kind of mysterious epiphany, because in Mark, the disciples don't quite know what to make of this thing that had happened to them. In John, it's a disclosure of the Logos, right? Jesus, that's John's theme. And here it seems more about that question of trusting Jesus and discipleship. And the other thing, of course, is in this passage, Jesus says, "Take courage." Before the Peter thing, when the disciples are like, "It's a ghost! Oh my gosh!" In Greek, the word is phantasma, which I love. It's a phantasma, the phantasma of the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus says, "Take courage! It is I. Don't be afraid."
Mm.
Which is the center of God's revelation in the whole Bible. Yeah.
Mhm.
And even that "it is I," ego eimi, the Greek version, that of course resonates with the name of God being. I am what I am, I will be what I will be, right? It's that divine name. So this is very much an epiphanic moment. Take courage, take heart, don't be afraid. It is I. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
beautiful. And then in this version, unlike in the others, the disciples say, "Truly you are the Son of God." This is a
Mhm.
big moment. It's a big moment in Matthew.
Mhm.
It's the first time anybody said that in Matthew. So this is a big epiphany as much as it is a lesson in discipleship, in trust for
Yeah.
Jesus. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much. I mean, you're pointing out that this is the only place where Peter is kind of invited into the story. You know, it does kind of bring home this question of what what is the gospel saying about discipleship?
Mm,
What is the gospel writer saying about what it's going to look like for us to
mm,
be disciples?
yeah.
And there's never a point where Peter confidently traverses the water.
Mm, mhm.
And because there would not be a confident traversing of the water without Jesus.
Yeah.
And that is instructive. I
Mm.
think it's helpful. Like it's actually like, oh, I think we keep thinking we're supposed to do this alone.
Oh, yeah.
We're supposed to do
Yeah.
this, we're supposed to be able
Yeah.
to walk out on the water by ourselves. And
Yeah.
I love the idea that, because again, so often we hear this. I mean, as someone who's raised in the church, heard this
Mhm.
story a million times,
Sure.
that little faith is such a like, I'm so disappointed in you, right?
Yeah.
What a letdown that your faith is so small.
Oh,
Instead of
Peter. Yeah.
and just get your act together, instead of having it be like a term of endearment,
Yeah.
like, oh, my little faith kid, the way that, again, there's something very parental. I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
there's something
Yeah.
there's a little parental about this, and
Mhm.
it's more of a like, rubbing his hair and listening at his head and saying, oh, you, and it's not so much a castigating of Peter's faith, but it's
Yeah.
a just a reminder, this is, there's always going to be these kinds of storms, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be here with you in them. And
Yeah.
why did you doubt that I would
Mm.
doubt
Mhm.
to be here with you? Why did
Yeah.
you doubt that I would catch you? Why did you doubt that,
Mhm.
I wouldn't let you sink?
Mm.
I think is feels like a very live question. I think
Yeah.
particularly as we think about, you know, every summer I have worked at CJM, I have been able to say that it's the hottest summer on record.
Yes.
And we're looking at this super El Nino situation that we're in this year with
Yes.
all of the storms. And there's this question of wanting to I think wanting to walk across the water,
Yeah,
like wanting to do it, and I think we're in that space where we're it feels like we're sinking,
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
are you going to catch us? Are you going to let us sink?
Yeah. Right. And there's reasons to think that Jesus is not gonna catch us
Hmm.
because people have died from heat
Hmm.
strokes. People have died from floods and tsunamis, and people have died from all the other or had their lives severely disrupted by injustices. I mean, John the Baptist's head is still off
Yeah, yeah.
even after this amazing epiphany that it did not magically, so it might be tempting to say, well, look, we are I don't think the allegory can be taken too far.
Hmm.
So you can't just say, if we just pray and look to Jesus, climate change is fixed. That that's not I think that would be kind of over no, that would not be
Yeah.
a good interpretation. But perhaps, you know, the story is a reminder that even in this chaotic moment, Jesus comes to us
Mm,
and reaches out. So I wouldn't wanna say, "Listen, you just gotta step out of the boat and anything's possible with Jesus." That's an unfair promise.
mm,
But I do think the solid promise of the chapter is don't despair.
mm,
Don't despair. Jesus is still with us. Jesus comes to us in the storm. And, I think for us in this moment, perhaps it's through our discipleship that we can behave in ways that at least don't make the storm worse.
mm.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, your next question is probably what is the call to the church? And I think the call is to keep working to imitate Christ, to
Mm,
heal, to feed, to calm these storms in whatever ways we can think of to do, even with our small abilities. So,
mm.
in that sense, yeah, getting out of the boat in faith, okay. It's interesting, Augustine about this chapter, I don't think he approves of Peter getting on the boat. So here's what he wrote. He wrote, "The one thing Jesus has to do is stop us from shaking ourselves loose in our own agitation in the boat and hurling ourselves into the sea." He says, "Even when the boat is being agitated and tossed about, it is still a boat. So keep yourself in the ship and turn to God with your request." Okay, that appeals to
So
me as a
mean.
more I
So
know,
mean to
right?
Peter, though. So
Poor
mean. I
Peter.
get it, but it's
Yeah.
so mean to Peter.
He doesn't even get an A for effort from Augustine, apparently. But yeah, for a person who's a little more cautious and doesn't like boats like me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm keeping myself in the boat. And if that's the church, fine. Yeah, but I think you don't wanna get too excited about Jesus' superpowers and think
Mm,
this is just like a magical answer to all our problems.
yeah.
There are still storms, but the faithfulness of Christ, that central promise, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid."
Mm,
And then the central confession, "Truly you are the Son of God."
mhm.
Those are the solid things to take with us out of this passage.
Yeah. And if we are using this as an analogy, the boat as an analogy for the church, there is something, again, even though I want to give Peter the benefit of the doubt, there is
Mm.
something again when I kind of go to the conversation we were having about your book. I've seen this with green teams that kind of break away from the church
Oh,
to do the work.
sure.
And where they fail is that they don't have the church, they don't have the protection
Mm.
of the church, they don't have the community of the church as they're trying to go out there and do the work, and they
Yeah,
kind of sink.
yeah.
And there's something about kind of wanting to step out on our own, kind of wanting
Mhm.
to, Peter's kind of literally abandoning ship here.
Yeah.
And leaving the other 11 guys to fend for themselves. Like, Jesus is going to save me, and you guys, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
When there's something about when what ultimately ends up happening is that the 13 of them are in the boat,
Yeah.
the
Right.
disciples and Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's something about the community staying together, the wholeness of the community that has been formed around Jesus. I mean, this is the group who just a little bit ago was worried that they couldn't feed this multitude,
Yeah.
and Jesus put them to work and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
you can do this.
Yeah.
I'm empowering you to do this to feed
Yeah.
this group." But it was all of them. There was
Mhm.
no lone figure in that story. There
Yeah.
was there was the disciples being, working together on this problem.
Mhm.
And there's something here for me that feels like one of the things that I have loved about getting to work in sort of this Christian environmental space is that there's not a lot of lone rangers.
Mm.
There's not a lot of like, yeah, I think we all kind of realize we need each other. We all
Yeah.
kind of realize none of us is capable of doing this on our own.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of I see a lot of egos being put to the side, and that is an encouragement in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because we're recognizing that we need each other. That like
Agree.
we're in the boat, the storms are happening, but we're in the boat together.
Yeah. I love that. And of course, I I would like to see Peter. I think part of us is Peter and part of us is the other disciples. I wouldn't say, we're each a type or something. And Jesus loves them all.
Yeah.
Jesus loves that brave, kind of reckless part of us. Jesus also loves the people who are in the boat going, "Ah!" And and getting them all together, that's when Jesus is in the boat with them, that's when everything calms. I mean, Jesus could have calmed the waves before, would have made walking on the water a little more pleasant, I suppose. But for whatever reason didn't.
Mhm,
Maybe to show something to the
mhm,
disciples that even for us, the story is what it is. So in the story, I think the story shows us that even amid the storms, Jesus is not fazed by the wind and the waves, and Jesus is willing to come to us all, both
mhm.
in our sort of brave and reckless and wonderful moments, or stupid, however you want to put it, and, in our moments of just hanging on in that boat. I don't know much about sailing, but would it be better, like, to toss Peter overboard and have less weight on the boat? Just thought of that. I don't know.
I
Maybe the
I
disciples were
don't
like,
I
"Oh,
don't know.
phew."
Like,
In any case, right? In any case, Jesus saves them all. Yeah, and that's a wonderful insight about working together, and I do understand why green teams sometimes sort of gallop off on their own because it is a lot of work to get everybody in a community on board.
yeah.
A lot of communication, it's a lot of one-on-one, it's really important, but it is a lot of work,
Mhm.
and it takes time, and of course, people get impatient because everything seems so urgent.
Yeah.
So, I do get that. I think there are some wonderful stories in the book of people who figured out how to get the whole community on board and sort of work at the speed of trust and all of that usual stuff, but it is hard, and I do get it, why people don't. But you're right, I mean, we have been in this sort of capitalist, individualist culture, we've been taught that our role is always as an individual consumer.
Mhm,
And so one of our instincts is to try to solve big problems by being like more virtuous
mhm,
consumers. That is not going to do it
mhm,
in this case. So just, recycling your plastic grocery bags or whatever, okay, that's nice, but it does not get to the issue. And there's no amount of perfect virtue you individually can achieve that is going to solve or even mitigate or even address, really.
mhm,
No, it's not to say that those individual practices aren't good. Practices of virtue are good.
mhm.
But yes, it's this coming together, putting egos aside, and holding hands with other people and saying, "We can do this together. It's gonna be messy, but that's okay."
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, I think the other piece of this that I just kind of, I feel it would be remiss if we didn't go back to this because I now have this image of the water
Mm.
overjoyed at the presence
Oh.
of Jesus. Like that was such like, I think that there is also a piece here for us to recognize that one of the things that a lot of the climate change narrative has done for us is turned creation into an enemy. Like,
Mm.
it's we're the water's going to get us, the heat's going to get us,
Mm.
the all of the things are going to get us. I think maybe one of the other pieces here is to figure out how do we share the joy
Mm.
of the water and the wind
Mm.
of the presence of Jesus. That like there's something here about I don't know, like that was such a vivid image for me of the
Yeah.
water like being excited, like the wind and the water being excited about Jesus's presence
Yeah.
with them. And like that's kind of their response is like, of course this looks scary to you guys in a boat, but Jesus is here and we're excited.
Yay, yeah. I
And
love that.
and it makes those things less of an object and less of
Mm.
a context and more part of the community. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, how do we don't just make this another us versus nature story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Man versus nature. Right.
exactly.
Because then the
Uh,
response is conquest,
yes.
and
Yeah.
the Bible is full of testimony, let's call it, to the agency of the
Mhm.
natural world and the belovedness of the natural world. I mean, you think about the end of Job, where the voice of God seems to forget all about Job's problems and get very, just sort of revel in the wildness of creation. And it's the big wild things that we might see as a threat, the behemoth, whatever that is, or the Leviathan. And God seems to have a thing for wild donkeys for some reason. I don't know. They just come up all the time.
Really?
This sort of untamed wildness of the created world. And our job, I think, in this moment in history, it's a kind of theological job and an existential or experiential job, is to return to a sense of kinship
Hmm.
with the natural world, not to underestimate the dangers,
Hmm.
but to perceive the living world as kin and reconcile our relationship to it so that we conceive of ourselves as part of this whole community of creation, as Randy Woodley likes to say. That seems to me the bottom line task right now, and there's lots of implications for that. But right, even to see this passage that way opens up a kind of alternative way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think as we close that invitation for kinship to embrace that wildness, that
Mm,
that that chaos, right? That seeming chaos
mm,
that is still just creation doing what it was made to do
yeah.
and being what God created to be. And so the call is for us to be a part of that and be what we're created to be.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. I love doing this with you. This is always one of my favorite things, and I'm so
Oh,
glad that
thanks, Eric.
we get to have this conversation.
We always have a good time.
And I'm glad that I finally, gave you an easier one.
Some theological disquisition in Romans or something. Yeah.
That was an option, but I decided let's do this. Let's do this instead.
Awesome. Well, thank
Thank you
you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you for joining us for the Green Lectionary Podcast. This episode was produced by Sprocket Wagner, and the song Within These Pages was written and produced by Christian McIver. You can learn more about this and other programs of Creation Justice Ministries at creationjustice.org.